Hey everybody, long time no see. My name's Charlie. Hey everybody, long time no see. My name's Charlie, and if you don't remember me, I'm one of the Queen's Commerce coaches for Admissions Ally. Now, if you're here watching this video, then you're starting to think about applying for Queen's Commerce and submitting those essays in November 2020. And guess what? That's exactly what we are going to be talking about today. Last week, Queen's just released their new November 2020 essays, and we're going to do a little deep dive into question 2. All right, we're going to teach you how to approach it, and then at the end of the video, give you an essay example of what your essay could look like. Great. So how do you best answer the activity question, as we're going to call it? So here's the question. Describe an activity or an initiative that you are involved in. Share successes and challenges you experienced during your involvement. So at first glance, it seems like quite a overwhelming question, right? What activity, what initiative should I talk about? But we're going to break it down and give you a structure on how to strategically approach this problem and make it very simple for you to tackle it. And if this question sounds familiar, well, you know what? It is. This year, Queen's Commerce actually got rid of their PSE. That's the Personal Statement of Experience question. And that question has traditionally been, choose one extracurricular activity or one employment opportunity you have listed on your PSE. In 300 words or less, describe the impact of this experience and the greatest learning outcome for you. Now, how is this different or similar to the second question that we're answering today? Well, its similarities are, we're still choosing one activity, right? Be it an activity, an initiative, or employment opportunity, whatever you want to call it, it's still something that you've been working on for the last, 5 or 6 years that you want to highlight and talk about, right? So what are the differences? The first difference is that they don't specifically say employment opportunity anymore. Not to say that you can't, talk about a job that you've been doing and then frame it as an initiative or as an activity, right? It's just that they've kind of changed the phrasing here. The second difference is there's a greater focus on successes and challenges versus a single learning outcome, right? If we take a look at this PSE question, describe the impact of this experience and the greatest learning outcome for you. They really want you to focus on one single learning outcome that you've learned. Whereas in this year's example, right, they just want you to share the successes, your challenges that you experienced during this involvement, right? So very similar. And of course, we're also going to be talking about your learnings in this activity or initiative within this question as well. So very, very similar, just a little different on how they're phrasing it. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't be confused. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the story structure that, most essays, and this one in particular, should follow. Number one, you want to start off with a hook, get into the context. Then there's a catalyst that happens. And lastly, talk about the outcome. Now I'm going to break it down step by step here. So number one, hook, right? This is the first couple of sentences that the reader is going to be reading, right? So you want to make sure it's engaging, that it is interesting, and that it captures the attention, right? So usually this is an alluring statement or an exciting preview of what's to come to really draw the reader in. Sometimes you can use analogies or clever use of words, though I've read a lot of essays and a lot of students always tend to fall back to, using quotes or very cliche openings. For example, perseverance is often defined in the Webster's dictionary as XYZ, right? We want to avoid using cliches. And lastly, the goal really is, again, to capture the reader's attention, right? So after you've got a great hook, we move into the context, right? So the context section is critical for the reader to understand the background and understand what's going on in the story, right? So you're setting up the scene, you're giving the information that's needed to understand what's to come. right? If we want to break this down, I'll take you back to your grade 10, grade 11 English class. It really goes down to the who, what, when, where, and why, right? Who's involved in the story? If it's you and your friends, you and a teacher, you and your parents, what are you guys doing? When is this happening? Where is it happening? And why? What's the motivation behind whatever it is you're doing in the story, right? So, for example, maybe you joined the basketball team because you've always loved the idea of playing basketball, or maybe your dad was a high school basketball player growing up, and so that inspired you to join. But, loosely, when the reader goes through this context section, they want to understand who, what, when, where, and why. What's going on? Give them the context. One important thing to note is that you don't want to overshare, right? You want to still be succinct with how you are expressing your ideas, right? It should be in a short couple sentences, just enough for the reader to know what's going on. Next, we move into the catalyst section, an experience that sparked your momentum to do something or make a change, right? This change usually comes with adversity or confronting certain obstacles, right? So what exactly happened in your experience that made it so unique, right? This catalyst should be learning, should lead to your learning opportunity, right? Without this catalyst, maybe you would not be the person that you are today in this experience. And lastly, the outcome. The outcome is the solution you come up with, or the trajectory you're on now. And what does this new world or new perspective look like with the change that's been done, right? So to bring it all back, you're going to be talking about a story that is dear to your heart, right? You're introducing with a hook, you're providing some context of what's going on, and then something happens that's a catalyst that changes your perspective or gives you a learning outcome, right? And then lastly, you talk about the outcome, right? What you learned, what you did, and what your new perspective is. Now, this sounds really general, so we can break it down into what this question, what a framework or outline looks like for this question specifically, right? So I'm going to read the question back to you guys again, so you guys can really digest it. Describe an activity or initiative that you are involved in. Share successes and challenges you experienced during your involvement, right? So let's break it down a little bit. Again, our structure here is a little bit different. On the left, we got opening with a hook, given some context, catalyst, outcome, successes, and lastly, the learning. So again, a lot of this slide here is a repetition of what we talked about on the previous slide. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to just pause, right? Read each bullet point or each section and start thinking about, what activities or initiatives that you guys might have in your life that might apply to this. One thing that I will note is that the catalyst, your challenges, your successes, and your outcomes are going to be the most important part of this essay, right? So that's reflected in the number of characters that we've allotted, right? So you take a look at the first introductory section, right? The hook and the context. You only got 550 characters here, right? But the catalyst, the outcome, and the successes and the learning, right? We got almost 1450 characters, all right? So more than half of your essay is going to be talking about what the challenges that you went through, the successes that you had, and the learning, that outcome that you got. All right. So at this point, you've probably read all of this by now. So let's get into the next section. And if you haven't, just quickly pause and give it a little read. So one other way we can structure this essay is the catalyst outcome paragraphs could be chronological through back-to-back examples. So in our initial suggestion, we were talking about you list out all your challenges, you list out all your successes, and then you talk about your learnings. Now, here's another way to approach it. You can do the hook, the context, right? That doesn't change, but you have a catalyst, you have a challenge, success, challenge, success, challenge, success, and then lastly, talk about your learnings, right? So for example, if I, in this context, have started a little side project or a little business of, let's say, selling sweaters, right? Selling hoodies, branded hoodies. And one challenge that I might have is the marketing, right? Nobody knows about my hoodies. How do I go from a relatively unknown little hoodie shop and start selling hoodies and getting my name out there? And, you know, that could be a challenge marketing, and the success could come in the form of me, you know, peddling my hoodies to my friends and my families, and then getting word of mouth, you know, me using social media as a platform through Instagram and Facebook to drive, you know, traffic towards my hoodie website, and all that, you know, fun stuff. So I think that to boil it down, what challenges have you faced, and then how did you overcome those challenges, and what were the successes that you found with respect to this particular challenge, right? So two different ways to approach this question. Really just depends on what you are more comfortable with and how your experiences align to each problem or each framework. So let's talk about an essay example that we have for you guys. Take a look at the left side, right? You got still the hook, context, challenges, successes, and learnings. And I'll go through it, right? We'll break it down section by section. So to begin, growing up in Vancouver, I often drove by East Hastings and saw the hardships others faced, including poverty and drug addiction. I became passionate about social change and was determined to do my part to help my community, right? So that's the hook. Very straightforward, nothing flashy, but the writer is able to convey his points very, very quickly. And the reader, we now know that, you know, his mission, he became very passionate about social change and he's determined to help give back to his community, right? So that sets the context for the rest of the essay, right? We know this essay is going to be about social change, right? And the motivation behind being passionate about social change makes sense, right? It's not just one day I woke up and I love social change. I want to, you know, be philanthropic, right? It's this reader has grown up in a, you know, sketchier, for lack of a better word, part of town in East Hastings in Vancouver. And he's seen firsthand the hardships that other people face. So what did this reader do? What did this writer do, right? I created Empty Cup, an organization to raise awareness for homelessness in Vancouver. I hope to give an identity to the strangers we walk by every day and inspire people to show them kindness. When we think of homelessness, an empty cup comes to mind, and I felt responsible for giving them the support they needed to feel taken care of. I also made an Instagram account to feature various homeless people around Vancouver so they could share their stories and what they wish people knew about their situation. So a couple of sentences, very, very succinct, very straight to the point. We know what the writer did. He created Empty Cup. This is what the organization's about. This is what the organization stands for. He also created an Instagram account, right? So now we know what's going on. Next, the catalyst, the challenges. I soon realized this wouldn't be easy as I thought. Many denied my request for an interview, saying that they didn't feel comfortable sharing their stories. I found it difficult to interact with people and get my message across that I was trustworthy and I wasn't judging them. At the same time, my Instagram page wasn't attracting many followers and I became discouraged. To solve this problem, I volunteered at local soup kitchens and donation centers to interact with them in a more approachable environment. So there were two challenges that the writer faced. Number one, he was trying to interview homeless people to share their story and they wouldn't respond to him. It's something that he didn't realize was going to be a problem. And the second problem was that his Instagram page wasn't attracting as many followers as he thought it would, right? So what did he do to solve this problem? He went out of his way. He went to local soup kitchens and different donation centers to interact with homeless people in a more approachable environment, right? So it's a very applicable, very real way to solve this problem that he was facing, right? Moving into the successes, after continuing to spread the word, my page grew from 10 followers to over 20,000 in 1 year. I hired a team of 10 and we collected over 10,000 cans of food to donate, raised $5,000 and interviewed 20 homeless people. I also did research online to learn about items that they need the most and created over 500 care packages to distribute, right? So one thing that I really like about what this reader did was he was very, very expressed his successes in very quantifiable terms, right? Whenever you guys can use numbers, always do that because it gives more context and it's more powerful, right? We can see the change. It's a huge success. He went from 10 to 20,000 followers, right? He hired a team of 10, right? He raised over 10,000 cans of food and over $5,000, right? So a lot of tangible successes here that, again, drive his passion for social change, right? We know the theme of the essay. It's all about social change. It's all about helping the homeless, helping the less fortunate, and all of his successes relate to that, right? So when you're thinking about the challenges and successes that you faced, make sure they're tangible, right? Make sure for every challenge that you had, you know, it would be great if you had a way that you solve that challenge, right? And lastly, the most important part, the learning outcome, right? What did this writer learn? This experience taught me how to build trust in a short amount of time. An important part of this was learning how to communicate and show empathy towards others while being mindful that everyone has their own unique story. I also acquired strong leadership skills as I managed my team members to successfully expand my organization and make a lasting positive impact in my community. So through everything that happened, right? His challenges and successes, all of these learning outcomes make sense, right? He learned how to build trust in a short amount of time interacting with homeless people. He was able to learn how to communicate and show empathy towards others, which is really important, you know, while being mindful that everyone has their own unique story. He also acquired strong leadership skills because we were talking about him managing a team of 10 earlier in the successes paragraph. And lastly, he made a lasting positive impact in his community, right? And that's what's really important. So to tie it up, we had a straight to the point hook, a very succinct context paragraph, 2 or 3 challenges, 2 or 3 successes, and lastly, an important learning outcome session that aligns with everything else that we were talking about in challenges and successes, right? You got to make sure your learning outcomes align with what you actually went through, right? So, for example, if the writer were to have talked about the importance of work ethic and perseverance, sure, that makes sense, because one would imagine that he must have had a strong work ethic and persevere through different challenges to make his organization a success that it was. But nowhere in the essay did he mention perseverance or work ethic, right? So if the writer would have talked about perseverance and work ethic in the learning outcome section, that wouldn't really make sense because he didn't really build anything up to it. So when you guys are thinking about the learning outcomes, make sure they relate to the activities, the actions, the successes, and the challenges that you guys went through. Great. So that is all for this short little session, just a little deep dive into the second question. If this has helped, if you want more support, take a look at admissionsally.ca. Myself, Joel, Jessica, we're the Queen's Commerce coaches for this year, and we are more than happy to support you further on your journey, whether that's for the November application, December, or January application if you are thinking of applying then. We have 2 amazing packages. Number 1 being the essential package, where you'll get one-on-one essay coaching and email support from the likes of myself, Joel, Jessica. And we also have the premium package, which is literally an end-to-end package will help you outline, draft your essays, edit them until both you and I are happy with the outcome. And we don't leave your side until you submit that essay to Queen's. And if you are interested, go to the website, shoot us an email. There are limited spots available. We are getting into crunch time, right? It's mid-November now, so it's time to put the foot on the gas. That being said, thank you guys. If you guys lasted to the end of the video, thank you. It's nice to meet you once again, and have a great morning, evening, nighttime, whatever time you're watching this.